should be telling a spooky story. But today, not quite a spooky story, but it is an interesting one nonetheless. It is about a monster that lives in Scotland. The loch is called Loch Ness. So here we go. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the Loch Ness Monster. The Loch Ness Monster lives in Scotland, in Loch Ness. The average depth is 433 feet. Max depth goes up to 744 feet. This is important because we're going to think about, could a monster live in something that deep? What do you think? Scotland has a really rich folklore, history. A lot of the tradition is oral and is passed down through generations and generations. However, the Romans did come and live in Scotland and England, so Loch Ness has likely been around longer than the Romans recorded it. However, when the Romans were there in the 1st century AD, the Ness was written about, and the monster, the myth, the legend that we know today was written about by the Romans. So, needless to say, this mysterious creature has been seen for so very long that it's difficult to tell where the mythology begins and the real creature might begin. The one that we see in pop culture, this picture here you've probably seen, that actually stems from the 1930s. A journalist did a piece on the Loch Ness Monster and basically got laughed at by its editor and whatnot, like, why are you looking for this? This is ridiculous. So what happened was, this man and his son, they're in this legend, created a photo of the Loch Ness, gave it to a reputable surgeon who sent it into the newspaper. Now, of course, at the time, no one knew this, and it wasn't, until much later that we found out that this photo was a fake. And there's still some people who don't believe it's a fake and think that this is some conspiracy to cover it up. I'm not one of those people, unfortunately. But I am one of the people who fell for the hoax, because as a child, I loved the idea of Nessie. And I think it's really Nessie that got me interested in cryptozoology in the first place. So, thanks, Nessie. You should know that cryptozoology is not a pseudoscience. It is not a fake thing. It is a real thing that has found real animals that other people didn't know existed. So cryptozoology essentially just means it is not identified as an existing animal by the scientific community. Usually you have a rich oral tradition, such as in Scotland with Loch Ness, or you might have it, just the local people accept it, but then you have these conquering people that come in and they don't believe it. Good examples of this? Gorillas. No one believed in gorillas. This was a cryptozoological animal. There's also the thing that looks like an antelope, what is it called? I can't remember, but I'll insert it here. Another really popular one is the giant squid, which I remember as a kid, I was told that it didn't really exist. And then they find it. It does exist. It is real. So now it's widely accepted by the main scientific community. But for a very, very long time, this was considered a mythological creature that didn't exist. So knowing that, it kind of opens your mind up to the idea that there are animals that we don't know exist. Even though we have been in so many places, we still haven't explored every inch of the earth. And even if we did explore every inch of this earth, we can't explore every inch of it simultaneously. So there's no way you can see everything. So in the 1930s, this photo basically sparked what we know as Nessie. and it kind of propagated the myth as more of a plesiosaur type looking animal. Now, plesiosaur is a dinosaur that blah 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 blah. It's found in the fossil record and was found millions of years ago. Okay, blah blah blah. What period it is, I don't know. So this surgeon's photo sparked a whole bunch of expeditions. People were enthralled, and Sheena's in the back. Can you see her? There's you. Oh, she looks like a little demon. Aren't you just the cutest little demon? Come here, little demon. She's a gremlin. Don't feed her after midnight, which it is now. This sparked all these expeditions, and people started exploring it. And it wasn't just the hoax photo. They ended up with other sightings from other people, some more reputable than others. Hi, Sheena. So some are more reputable than others, and some had little videos, and there's a lot of hoaxing going on. There's a lot of people trying to prove that you can easily manipulate it and whatnot. But on the average year, 8 people a year report seeing Nessie. That does not say how many people do not report seeing Nessie because they're afraid of being deemed crazy or are worried about any sort of social stigma that might go along with it. There are people that dedicate their lives to this. So in that regard, we can't just blow this myth off completely. There are people who have seen this and believe it so fully that it requires a bit of a second glance. Well, let's look at this from a zoological standpoint, shall we? So let's assume that Nessie is a plesiosaur who managed to survive the apocalypse of dinosaurs where everything else died, except for alligators and crocodiles. So let's just assume that, okay? So according to, whoa. Okay, something weird happened. The ghost is fucking with my lights. It's changing the lights. You can't change the color without a remote. My remote is sitting right here. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get it back to the way it was. Okay, well, this will have to do. What makes a plesiosaur? Plesiosaur was a reptile, so let's go with that idea. If Nessie is a plesiosaur and she's a reptile, that would make her cold-blooded. If you know anything about the UK and Scotland, it's not particularly reptile friendly because it is not particularly warm. So let's think about this. If you're cold-blooded, basically that means you don't have an internal body temperature that can be regulated by yourself, by your heart, by, you know, your own body. You have to absorb that from the sun, from your environment. So basically, Nessie would have to be basking in the sun all the time because it is cold there. The average is about 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's something to consider. And I think that's strike one for the idea of Nessie being a plesiosaur, because the ideal temperature for reptiles is about 70 degrees. That's not to say they can't live in places with cooler climates, it's just generally that's what they prefer. And reptiles can hibernate through winter, but Nessie would pretty much be asleep all the time, and I don't think she'd be very healthy. So the plesiosaur can be about 15 feet. So is it possible for a 15-foot animal? Well, there'd have to be multiple of them because you gotta breed. So if you have something that is 15 feet in this nest, this lock, is there even enough room? Yeah, I think there is enough room. I think that there's plenty of room for a couple of them. So most scientists believe that plesiosaurs lived in oceans and not in lakes. So freshwater versus saltwater. However, I'm seeing some differing opinions on this, and there's also the theory that the loch was actually part of the ocean at one point. I mean, as far as I know, we were all in this Pangea moment, and we were all smushed together anyway, so I don't know that we would be able to tell based on where the bones are found, like the bones in fossils are found, whether or not they were oceanic or if they were freshwater. But I would imagine you'd find some kind of salt residue if it was a saltwater ocean or what have you. So I'm gonna go with that's a point against the idea that Nessie is real, because I don't think Nessie could survive in this freshwater and brackish water location instead of the ocean. There's only one particular big animal that I can think of that can do both salt and fresh, and that's the bull shark. So, and even then they can only stay for so long before they need to be in the salt water. Something else that I thought was extremely interesting is that scientists don't believe that plesiosaurs were able to reach their neck upright. They didn't have the range of motion that a lot of our dinosaur toys told us that plesiosaurs would have. So they wouldn't be able to hold themselves up in a swan-like position, sort of like the famous surgeon's photo. So I'm gonna go with... They aren't quite ready, like they can't quite get the swan-like silhouette that Nessie is famous for. So I thought that was interesting, so I'm gonna go with that's a strike against Nessie being a plesiosaur, because a lot of people that claim that she's plesiosaur looking see her with her neck out of the water. It's actually so interesting because it's gone back so long that they thought this, that someone actually thought it was the trunk of an elephant that was under the water. Like an elephant using it like a snorkel and just being under the water. So another thing that I think is a point against Nessie is that scientists do believe plesiosaurs would be closer to the surface because they actually breathed air. They do not have gills or any way of breathing underwater, which would mean that Nessie and her suitors would have to be closer to the surface. Scientists also believe that the food that they ate lives closer to the surface instead of deep down, so there's really no reason for these plesiosaurs to go very down. In fact, it would probably be counterproductive for them because they have to come up so often for air. So this would mean that Nessie and her suitors would probably have a lot more sightings because you not only have one creature, but you'd have multiple in this loch. And while the loch is large enough for multiples of them, I don't think that you'd get so few sightings. If they have to come up to breathe air, they have to be close enough to the surface to get their food. I see a lot of cryptozoologists talking about how Nessie lives really deep down and that's why we've never seen her. And okay, I mean that's a possibility, but not if she's a plesiosaur. Which I think brings us to the next point, that they are carnivorous, and there is enough food in the lake to support a large carnivorous animal, depending on what they actually ate. Scientists now believe plesiosaurs ate more mollusks and like shellfish type things, and I don't know too much about the loch, but I couldn't find anything about that type of population being there. However, I found lots of different types of fish that could definitely support them. Let's see, I wrote them down. We got Atlantic salmon, char, eels, minnows, pike, and trouts. So, as a carnivorous plesiosaur, I think there is enough of a food. However, where they would catch that food is my main issue. So we got a point against and point for. Because we got a pro Nessie, there's enough food in there. We got an anti-Nessie, she's not hunting where they say a plesiosaur should be hunting. Which brings us to the next idea. What if Nessie isn't actually a plesiosaur? Mind blown. Okay, so if Nessie's not a plesiosaur, what the hell is she? What is she? Like, enough people are claiming to see something in that water that you would think something is there. The most popular theory for what Nessie is a sturgeon, which, insert photograph here, I think is pretty freaky looking. So I can see why they would think that people might be mistaking this for some prehistoric dinosaur, especially if they don't see it every day. If they don't know what that type of fish looks like, your brain could easily trick you into it. And then you see a picture of it later and your mind has already blown it up to thinking that it's this one thing that you're like, you see a picture of it later and you go, no, that's not what it was. That's not what it was. So that's a possibility. So another idea is that it's fish diving into the water or birds diving into the water and creating all these ripples, which are looking more like a monster instead of ripples. I feel like most people know what ripples in the ocean look like. or in water. Oh, there's butter. Just getting all the cats in this video today. Another theory that is really popular is that it's logs or it is some sort of debris. I don't like the theory that it is logs because I feel like if it was logs, people would have time to get close enough to check it out and just, you know, deduce that it wasn't a log. So that theory doesn't quite mesh for me. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you are a believer in Nessie or if you're a skeptic. What would it take for you to believe in Nessie? So be sure to let me know if you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up. If this is something you're not interested in, give me a thumbs down, I guess. Whatever. Let me know if you like this spooky lighting, because I feel like it lends itself to the mysteriousness in the mood. However, it might just be freaking annoying for other people because you can't really see what I look like or whatever. But I think spooky lighting's fun. If you don't like spooky lighting, let me know. And if you like other colors,